Welcome to the History and Heritage podcast with me, Liam Blake. Join me as we uncover hidden stories and insights that shaped our world. From mysteries to legacies, join us on this journey through time. The name Ryan carries a quiet power, one of those Irish names that seems to need no translation. It feels instantly familiar, steeped in both the land and the language that shaped it. For centuries, it has been among the most numerous surnames in Ireland, spoken in farmhouses, townlands and parishes from Carlow to Tipperary and across the world, carried by emigrant families whose ancestors once ruled small corners of Gaelic Ireland. But behind the familiarity lies something deeper, not simply a family history, but a principle, a code of endurance and dignity that has survived through exile, famine and change. The story of the Ryans is not a tale of faded nobility, but of the unbroken thread that binds these little kings of the past to a global clan today. The meaning of the name itself has long stirred fascination and debate. The most widely repeated translation, Little King, comes from the old word ri, meaning king, and ending with on, suggesting smallness or affection. It is an appealing image, a people descended from minor kings, bound by pride and a sense of sovereignty. Yet scholars have long cautioned against taking this explanation too literally. Professor John Ryan of University College Dublin once wrote that what the Rian in the surnames Maoilriain and Maoilriain is has never satisfactorily been explained. Rian, like Neil, seems to be so ancient that its meaning was lost before records began. That uncertainty has never weakened the name. If anything, it made it stronger. Lacking a fixed etymology, the Ryans defined their meaning through action, reputation, and continuity. The mystery became part of the identity, a name whose origin may be forgotten, but whose worth has been proven again and again. The first Ryans of history were not kings of empires, but guardians of smaller realms, men of land, language, and loyalty. In Carlow, the O'Ryans of Idrone were descended from Cathair Mór, the 2nd century king of Leinster, and they ruled their territories as lords of Idrone for centuries. They were, in many ways, the image of Gaelic Ireland before the storm, proud, independent, and deeply tied to their soil. But time, as it always does, brought change. Norman incursions, English law, and inter-clan rivalries chipped away at old power structures. Still, the O'Ryans endured, adapting to the shifting landscape while holding fast to the old ways. Further west, in the rougher lands of Tipperary and Limerick, a new branch of the clan was rising. The Maoilriains, later shortened simply to Ryan, emerged around the 14th century, at a time when Gaelic families were reclaiming their place after the initial shock of Norman domination. Their name in Irish, Maoilriain, meaning descendant of the follower of Rian, carried a sense of devotion and purpose. They were settlers, warriors and farmers, carving out lives in the fertile valleys of Oney and Oney Beg. Their fortress at Gortkelly near Thurles stood as a statement of resilience. Even as power shifted from Gaelic to English hands, the Ryans' presence never faded from the Tipperary soil. By the 18th century, the name had become synonymous with the heart of Ireland. In parishes like Upperchurch, Newport and Toomevara, it seemed that every lane or field belonged to one Ryan or another. This abundance created a curious problem. Too many Ryans to tell apart. Their solution was one of the small miracles of Irish culture, the nickname tradition. It was an act of wit and community memory. One family might be the Ryan Bonds, the fair-haired Ryans or white Ryans, and another the Ryan Plunger or Ryan Goat, or the Ryan Carpenters. These nicknames, passed through generations, were more than just labels. They were micro-histories, each tied to a story that everyone in the parish remembered. In them, the Ryans preserved individuality against anonymity, turning a common name into a tapestry of living lore. Among these local stories, we find the life of Maoilriain of Upperchurch, born in 1798, whose family nickname was Ryan Lacken. His baptism record survives in the parish register, written in fading ink. Michael was a schoolmaster, one of those quiet village educators who taught children their letters by candlelight in makeshift hedge schools when education was still restricted from Catholics. He taught through the penal years, when teaching the Irish language or the catechism could still be an act of defiance. When the national school system was established in the 1830s, Michael became its first registered teacher in his area. For decades, generations of children in rural Tipperary learned from him not only arithmetic and reading, but the dignity of knowing who they were. When he died in 1867, his pupils lined the road for his funeral, holding candles. He had never left Ireland, but his influence stretched across countless lives, a quiet example of the Ryan motto in action. Malo mori quam fideri. I would rather die than be disgraced. That same principle guided the Ryans who faced the Great Famine. The 1840s brought hunger and grief beyond reckoning, and with it a scattering that would shape the modern Irish world. Parish registers and shipping lists are filled with Ryans, John, Mary, Patrick, Bridget, departing from Cork, Limerick and Waterford aboard coffin ships bound for Liverpool, Boston and Quebec and the wider world. One of them, Bridget Ryan of Thurles, left Ireland in 1848 at the age of 21. Her name appears on the passenger list of the Washington Irving, a vessel docked in New York on St. Patrick's Day. She arrived penniless and ill, but soon found work as a domestic servant in Manhattan. Within 3 years, she married another Tipperary emigrant, a mason named James Dwyer. Together, they saved enough to open a small grocery in the Bowery, one of those humble immigrant businesses that stitched the Irish community together. Their shop doubled as a gathering place for new arrivals, a place to find work, a meal, or a familiar voice. When Bridget died in 1892, her obituary in the Irish American Weekly described her as a mother to many of her name and beyond. Her descendants still live in New York, and her name, Bridget Ryan, is carved in stone in Calvary Cemetery among tens of thousands of other Irish names that built the city. The famine years also sent the Ryans in other directions, west across the Atlantic to Canada, and south across the equator to Australia. In 1852, Thomas Ryan from Neenah was transported to Van Diemen's Land after being convicted of stealing grain from a British landlord. He was 23 and illiterate, described in the court record as of strong build and quiet manner. When his sentence ended, he chose to stay in Tasmania, working as a carpenter and farmer. His descendants would later join the gold rush in Victoria, and one of them, Ellen Ryan, born in 1857, became a publican and entrepreneur in the Northern Territory, known to history as Nellie the Publican. She ran the Victoria Hotel in Pine Creek, a dusty frontier town, and was famous for treating Aboriginal customers with rare fairness for the era. Her establishment became a refuge for the poor and the displaced, and her story remains a proud one in Australian Irish circles today. The endurance of the clan transposed to a new world. The Ryans of Ireland were also soldiers, some by choice, others by necessity. In the late 19th century, Patrick Ryan of Ballyporeen enlisted in the British Army and fought in the Crimean War. His service record, preserved in the National Archives, tells of the frostbite, illness and endurance at Sevastopol. When he returned home, he built a small schoolhouse with his pension money, determined to give his children opportunities he never had. His grandson, born in 1902, would later fight on the opposite side with the Irish Volunteers during the War of Independence. That grandson, also named Patrick Ryan, was part of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade, serving under Dan Breen. He was wounded in 1921 during an ambush near Hollyford. The Ryan story, then, was never simple. It crossed loyalties and eras, bound always by a sense of duty and courage in the face of change. There were also Ryans of faith, people who brought that same spirit of endurance into the service of others. One such figure was Sister Mary Saviour Ryan, born Catherine Ryan in Cashel in 1874. She joined the Sisters of Mercy and trained as a nurse, eventually working in South Africa during the Boer War. Her letters, kept in the Mercy archives, describe tending to both British and Boer soldiers, and later to African children in mission hospitals. To heal, she wrote in one letter, is to honour what God has made. She died of fever in 1903, but her grave in Natal is still tended by the local community. Her story, almost forgotten, mirrors that of countless Irish women who carried compassion far beyond their homeland. In the 20th century, the Ryan name found its place in new kinds of history, in politics, sport and culture. Sean T. O'Kelly's right-hand man during the early years of the Irish Free State was Dr. James Ryan of Wexford, a founding member of Fianna Fáil and one of the architects of Ireland's health system. His vision of public welfare and national dignity marked a new phase in the Ryan legacy, from clan to citizenry. And in the arts, Kathleen Ryan, the Dublin-born actress of the 1940s and 50s, brought Irish grace to international cinema, starring in films like Odd Man Out alongside James Mason. Her quiet strength on screen, proud, tragic and unbroken, seemed to carry the same spirit as her ancestors from Only Beg. Throughout all of these lives, the teacher in Upperchurch, the emigrant in New York, and the convict-turned-carpenter in Tasmania, the nurse in South Africa, and the freedom fighter in Tipperary, one thread remains constant. The Ryans did not define themselves by power or wealth, but by integrity and insurance. Their motto, Malo Mori Quam Fidari, is no hollow phrase. It is a lived truth. It echoes through parish nicknames and the stone of Gertkelly Castle, through the schoolrooms of famine-era Ireland and the bustling streets of immigrant cities abroad. To die rather than to be disgraced, to live honourably, no matter how humble the circumstance, is a creed that still resonates today. Today, the Ryan name stretches across every continent, from parish registers in rural Ireland to skyscrapers in New York, from Carlow's rolling hills to the suburbs of Sydney. It remains a symbol of Irish identity that has adapted without losing itself. There are Ryans in the GAA fields of Tipperary, Ryans teaching in classrooms of London, Ryans nursing in Boston hospitals, and working on construction sites in Perth. Each, in their own way, carries that same quiet crown. The name that once meant Little King, or perhaps something even older and now forgotten, still holds its dignity. In it lives the same enduring faith that weathered conquest, famine, and exile. The Ryans, like Ireland itself, have transformed again and again, yet never surrendered their core. And so, the story of the Ryan name is not just a genealogy. It is a reflection of Ireland's heart, a people shaped by hardship but not defined by it, guided by faith, work and honour. From the little kings of ancient Carlow to the emigrants who built new worlds across the sea, the Ryans have carried something unbroken through time, a belief that one's worth is measured not by power but by steadfastness. It's a story written not in titles or castles, but in lives lived faithfully, bravely, and remembered with pride. You've been listening to the History and Heritage podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show on Podbean, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And find me on Instagram at Liam Blake Podcaster. For now, I'll be taking a short break from the Surname series for a special 4-part series, one that could only belong to November. The Surname series will be back in December. Thank you for listening and for helping to keep history alive.